Well, oh, I have a lot listed. I was told that I could like
Mm,
use whitening soaps, and I'm like,
papaya
why?
soap.
That papaya soap, man, that freaking this thing is actually considered a Filipino characteristic. It's a virtue. It's considered a virtue.
Mm,
But when you actually look at it, it has it's kind of not really great. And this is resiliency in the
yeah.
Philippines.
Hi guys, it's Eun and welcome to episode 14 of Toxic Talks. And today I'm with one of my longest and closest best friends. Please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone. So I am Aria, and as Yoon said, I'm one of her closest best friends, one of her longest. And I'm 20. I'm currently studying at UST. I guess that's all.
Yeah. Now, before we talk about our friendship, I'm going to share a disclaimer. And well, disclaimer is that we do not represent the whole Filipino community. We only represent our lives and our personal experiences, which you may or may not relate to. Now, as we've mentioned, we are each other's longest and closest best friend. Not necessarily longest friend, but closest and longest best friend. Yeah. So we have a lot to talk about, and I'm allowing her to say what she wants to say first about our friendship.
Well, for me personally, I think it's like one of my I don't mean it in like romantic sense, but like very intimate friendship because it's parang really but it's like my friendship with Eunice is one that I consider like a really deep connection. Like I really see her as like a soul sister, ganon, parang soulmate. And um memory ba? Daming memory, girls.
True, true. It's hard to pick.
It's hard to pick. But to be honest, whenever I think about our like right now when I'm trying to like pinpoint a particular memory, a lot of the things I think of is actually like the down parts. Because
Mm,
it's actually really, I mean, it's great and comforting to have like a friend that you could parang call when you're down.
mhm,
And I think for both of us, like we're that friend for each other. So
mhm,
parang it's a bit of a glimpse over
mhm.
on like our relationship na. Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree. And um, for me, I guess I'd like to add is so Craven in our video, he mentioned that we both liked each other, and I'm just like I'm gonna say this as well. So for you guys, if you actually want to know the whole story, we could actually dish that out in a different series or episode. But the reason why Ari and I became best friends was because we like the same guy. I'm not
Super.
gonna go into context, but that's how it basically started. In a yeah.
Yeah, we like the same guy. Oh, can I like just dish in that I actually did not like her at first? Like it was a very like walang foundation at all my like hatred. Actually not hatred. I just think I disliked her. I don't think I've ever hated her. It was like no reason. And over one guy.
Over one.
Over one guy who we both did not end up with at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But let's not get into that. That's a
Yeah.
whole different topic.
That's a different topic.
Mhm. But what I do want to talk about is that Aria is actually one of the reasons why Toxic Talks became a project because it was something we did together. Um, I'm saying this for the public to see so that you also feel pressured to do this more with me. But Toxic Talks, when it was just the two of us, it was meant to be like our thing. It was supposed to be our project together of some sort, not necessarily a podcast. It could have been a book because we both love writing. We were thinking of so many things regarding it. But yeah, I'm really grateful for her for our friendship because she helped me with this idea from taxi talks to toxic talks. So yeah. So today, Arya is actually going to help me wrap up last week's topic, which was toxicity within the community, specifically Filipino community. And I want to mention that some of the points that I'll share and she'll share is actually from an article that I read. And apparently, she was also going to talk about the same things without reading the article. But I want to add this because I actually was able to talk to the person who wrote the article. Her name is Ate Abby Pashon. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your last name. But yeah, I reached out to her on Instagram. And I'm so happy that she replied. And basically, she said that she might watch this. So Ate Abby, hi, if you're watching this. So yeah, I'm gonna link that article below so you guys can also read it because the points that I will make will also be coming from that article. Yeah, so let's get into the discussion. So something that I've been asking all my guests is what is toxicity for them? So what is toxicity for you?
So actually I had to think about it. I was already expecting this question, like watching other Toxic
Mm-hmm.
Talks episodes. And actually my answer is kind of related to Craven's answer previously. Guys, watch that video too.
Mm. Yes,
So he
promoting
spoke
best
about,
friends.
yeah. So he spoke about like poison and venom and like
Mhm,
chemicals that get in your body. And actually, when I thought about the word toxicity, that was actually one of the things that came into my mind, because
mhm,
like in the medical field. So how's it that like how can you consider something toxic, like that when
mhm,
something is poisonous or venomous, and then we dig deeper, and then we pinpoint that we consider something toxic when it becomes threatening to your well-being. So I guess
mhm,
that's what I consider as toxic, like something that threatens individuality, your growth, your relationships,
mhm,
or just simply any part of your well-being, be it may it be your like physicality, mentality,
mhm,
um your spirituality. So
mhm,
yeah, I guess that's what's toxic, what
mhm,
toxic means to me.
mhm. And now we're also going to talk about community. So what is community to you, or what are other examples you can give besides Filipino community?
um a community, I thought of like the meaning they give us back in grade
Mhm,
school, where it's
mhm,
made up of units of family.
mhm,
So like I guess at the simplest in the simplest way, I guess that's what a community is. It's like
mhm,
units of people, groups of people, or it could also be a community is when people share similarities, because you could be in the
mhm,
same place, or you could have the same race, or the same qualities or
mhm,
traits. So I guess that's what I consider communities, when certain groups of people have something in common, or when they have certain
mhm.
similarities. Yeah.
Yeah. Now we've defined toxicity and community. Now, what is it together? What do you think of when you think of community and toxicity?
So when this topic was first brought up, so toxicity in communities is honestly a very interesting topic. Well, actually, I considered it a very challenging one, because toxicity can come in various, and by various I mean many forms. And
Mhm,
the thing is, a lot of these I realize actually stem from our own individual toxicities, to
mhm,
which also ranges to those toxicities that we get from our own families, our relationships, be it romantic or not. And most of the time, if we don't manage a lot of these, it usually reflects in how we interact with
mhm,
our community, and is usually translated in how we deal with people outside of our circle of family and friends.
mhm,
But if I could generalize it more, like personally, I think a lot of community toxicity is born out of lack of respect, close-mindedness, and prejudices. Like I think that personally, I
mhm,
think that's what causes toxicity in communities. And I think it's also an important thing to note as to why toxicity is still very present in our communities. I think sometimes we forget that people, from those we know to those who are strangers, are human beings with complex lives and feelings. And interestingly enough,
mhm,
there's actually a word for this. I'm not sure if it's actually accredited as a real word, but
mhm.
it's on the internet. It's called sonder, where
Mm.
you right. where it's basically this realization that when of realizing that strangers are as um have lives as complex as yours and are as
Mm-hmm.
vividly as alive as you are. And I think sometimes we as people forget that. Like we don't come to
Mm-hmm.
that realization. So yeah, that was long. Sorry.
Yeah, but that you put it in the best words I could possibly explain as well. And when you mentioned Sonder, I was already thinking of that when you were, oh, if you're gonna mention
Yeah.
that, but yeah, I'm also not sure it could just pass out as a Tumblr word because there are those things, yeah. But it is actually a lovely word to say that everyone has their own complex issues, complex life changes, and everything like that. And I think you are right when you said that it's the lack of it's of this of respect and close mindedness, because these are the things that makes us think that we're better than other people at times. Like when we're close minded, where we don't see another person's perspective, we think we're better. We think that, oh, how I think, how I live is the best way to live. When in fact, there might be other ways. And yeah, those are good points. Now, since we are going to talk about our own community as Filipinos,
Mhm.
are there experiences that you could share?
Well, oh, I have a lot listed. But actually, wait, sorry. Can, okay, so personal experiences. I think generally lang kasi I also
Mhm,
mentioned this lack of boundary, I lack of like respect and like
mhm,
prejudices. And I think what happens is, I don't know if this also happens with other community. I think so. That
mhm,
sometimes you lack respect for boundaries within
mhm,
like Filipino communities. And
mhm,
actually, like in the article that you mentioned,
mhm,
it's I also mentioned that a lot of toxicity stems from, family, like our
mhm,
own. So like if I'm going to, like, for example, just focus on family, for example, uh you'll find that in family, like, this respect for boundary is actually very lacking. And
mhm,
we tend to make comments a lot. Kasi I'm sorry, I'm suddenly thinking of certain situations like family
mhm,
gatherings. And this is actually stated in the article. I think one of
mhm,
the main reasons for this lack of boundary as well is it's very existing in the Filipino community, actually, this ageism thing. Like, we're
mhm,
very, right? And particularly about this ageism is that a lot of the older generations look down on
mhm,
the youth, which I think
mhm,
is actually a very huge problem. And it actually reflects, especially in families.
mhm,
And you say, like, it's really hard to express yourself or an idea or an argument, because
mhm,
most of the time they don't want to accept it. Like,
mhm.
especially when you're young, and they throw out comments such as, "I've lived longer than you, I know more,"
Yeah.
or right. And or because I've lived longer, I've had things worse than you, so I
Mhm,
know better. And somehow that they think that it justifies the fact that um it justifies their argument, na like you what you're saying, like,
mhm,
or what you're going through isn't significant now. And then
mhm,
there's also, like, regarding boundaries, there's also this. So, like, one of the things that I keep thinking of is when they make comments such like, um your body. Alam mo,
mhm,
alam ng mga tao yun, like, yung mga yung mga maririnig mo naman yun kahit saan, na like, "Uy, tumaba ka, uy, pumayat
mhm,
ka." Which is so common in our culture. It's
mhm,
like so deeply ingrained within the titos and titas of the
mhm,
Philippines. But if you actually, like, kind of delve deeper, like, into that, there's there's a lot of consequences to statements like that, diba?
mhm,
Right? And I've personally have experienced things like that. And sometimes you're pressured to just accept it because it's common, it's
mhm,
culture. But just because something is common and, like, has been accepted as part of our culture doesn't make it right. It's not, doesn't mean it's supposed to maintain as something normal. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I guess that's one of the things,
Yeah,
that I consider as toxic.
those are good points, like boundaries and agency. I think they also just like a lot of the things that are toxic, they actually kind of cover it with something else. That it's not toxic. It's actually that since I'm older, I should have more authority. Like it's supposedly like age is something based that bases their authority of a person, and that's why boundaries are like what boundaries? I'm older than you. I have the right to order you around, whether we're close or not close. That's when you said ageism, that's what I thought of, that they make it look like as if it's a free pass to make you like say stuff. And I think another thing that they use as a way to make boundaries like non-existent is that we're family. We should be really close. We should know
True,
everything
true.
about each other. That this and that, that's in the name of family, which at first we think it's good. It's good intentions, stuff like that. But in reality, you're taking everything away from the person's uniqueness. Going back to the term sonder, that you're making it look like as if they're supposed to be okay because you're okay with it. We're forgetting that everyone has their own preferences, and it's sad that in our communities that also happens. And something I want to add more about experiences, like my personal experience, and you're also included here, is that it's mentioned in the article that child bragging and comparing happens as well as an experience. And we both experience that, whether it's within our family or we've heard it from other Filipino families. Let's say we gathered in a family event or anything like that. I personally experienced you being compared to me by your own dad. And I was like, I didn't feel good about it because you are my best friend, but in general, it didn't feel right because in my perspective, he was bringing down his own daughter in front of somebody, like it's like you're being humiliated in front of me, and I didn't feel that way. I didn't feel great about that. And like you mentioned, you actually talked to me about that, and I was like put in this position where am I supposed to say sorry? It's not actually my fault though. Because they were comparing my lifestyle choices and how they wanted you to be more like me in certain aspects. And for me, I never even pushed that on you. I never I was like, we respect each other that, okay, she does this, I do this, and that's fine. But it's so sad to see that even our parents don't respect those. Like we're able to respect our boundaries, but our parents don't respect it. And it's actually sad. And that's one of the experiences. And in the article as well, you said body shaming. So both of us have different, we've experienced it differently. I've been always told, oh, like, ang payat-payat mo,
Okay.
ganyan. And to other people, I want to speak up. Not saying it's as bad as people who are called, fat, but it's just that we also do feel insecure about being called that as well. Because, first of all, I don't, personally for me, I also didn't like it because it was grooming me to have this idea that being mapayat was also prettier. So obviously, I was starting to have this opinion on people that are my good friends and who are like who has more weight than me, and thinking, oh, they're ugly because this. It's because of how they would groom me with certain things. And now when I hear it, I feel bad because like don't use me as a justification, like beauty standard wise. Like I can never speak for those who really are in the other end, because I am definitely in the sense Filipino standard wise, I do actually fit the criteria in a lot of ways. So I will not say that I felt, sad, but I felt sad for those who were not, because I was used as this, like model, and I'm like, wait, what? I'm not though. Like it just created this toxic mindset, and I really had to relearn that it was bad because I didn't know better growing up in this community. Because it's not even just within, my family. It's also outside. Filipinos themselves also just go like, wow, you're so maputi, and you also speak English
Oo.
very well, everything like that. And I was like, yo, no, like it made me feel so prideful. And I don't, as a person, having so much pride is not good. It's like being cocky and thinking, oh, I'm the best than everyone else. So for a time being, I did think of myself like that. And it's only later on that I learned that that was wrong. But yeah, toxicity actually is, when we talk about it, it doesn't it's bad. It's bad. But in a community, sometimes it's normalized. Normal
That's
doesn't
true.
mean it's good or bad. Normal means it's something that commonly happens, and it's really sad that it happens within our community. And yeah, and another thing that I'd like to add is gossip. So obviously, gossip, in a sense,
Chismosa culture.
you know, I think it also comes to boundaries, because let's say that person wanted to keep it to like whoever they told it to, and then it spreads. That's like disrespecting them, disrespecting like the confidentiality of you sharing that. And there might be, like certain, I've heard stories of like a family wanted to break out this big news, but before they even broke it out, somebody already said it, and they're like, "Oh, what? We wanted to say it first, though. Why did you end up saying that?" So there are situations where I guess gossip is good in a sense of spreading news really fast. Sure, why not? But when it comes to like personal things that you want to keep muna within the group, or there's also just gossip that's false, like they're actual just rumors, and then the whole family will start thinking, oh, they're like this, like that. And it's so sad, like even with the Filipino community as well, that they'll agree when a lot of people are saying it. When a lot of people agree, everyone's just gonna like make it like this. And I remember back in school, like, school culture with gossip and rumors,
Yeah.
our own batchmates had rumors going around. And me as a person, I was like, it made me question if I knew my friends, because like, what do you mean they're like that? It was so sad to see that everyone was like this, and you would find out that other schools were also hearing those rumors. it wasn't
Yes,
it
yeah.
wasn't just it wasn't just that. And that's so toxic with gossip. It's not just like, oh, it's just within our batch, it's just within our section stuff. No, it goes everywhere. It actually goes everywhere. And moving on, so since this is the community that we live in, how does it affect your life, like outside, like when you're not in the Filipino community? Does it affect how you socialize with other people?
I don't think it actually, I don't like the person that I am now. I don't think that it actually affects me, parang like how I interact. I think it affects me in a way na parang um I've learned from the
Mm,
toxicity that I've identified in my own community. So right now, it's not that I'm being sensitive, pero I think that I'm more careful with how I interact in, kasi it's unfortunate kasi we all grew up in a Filipino community. Like, let's accept it. Kaya some
mhm,
of these toxic traits were normal for us until
mhm,
we realized it wasn't. So
mhm,
parang, I guess it's more of these toxicities because, I know for my, parang alam ko naman na sa sarili ko na hindi sila maganda. More of, pag na-realize ko na kung yung hindi maganda, I just kind of learn from it. And it
mhm.
helps me, I guess. I don't know if it makes me a better person, but I think that it does in some sense when you know what's not right anymore. So parang, yeah. Ganun.
That's actually great that you're not as affected anymore as you used to. On the other hand, though, with my situation, my situation, mine is really different. It was different experiencing Filipino community within a different country.
Yeah.
It was There was an international aspect, because in honestly, in the Filipino community in UAE, it was, I guess, more respectful, because we're also like learning from other communities that were
Cultures,
around
yeah.
us, you know. But here in the Philippines, when I got here, and it just felt so weird. Like I felt like a foreigner at all. Like it was like I was going into a community for the first time, and it still kind of affects me to this day, on the aspect that the way I look or the way I speak, everything about me is so foreign to them. And instead of feeling welcome, how like they say Filipinos are so hospitable. And for me, I did feel like that, because he would always ask questions like, wow, why are you so white? Isn't like UAE so like a desert country? And I'm like, well, I didn't go out a lot. That explains
Malakas sa
it.
aircon dito, mga sis.
Exactly. Like I never had to like be under the heat, and it's not like here, unlike here, there are the infrastructures here, like they don't always all have aircon, so it's better to just be outside because it's actually hotter to be inside the building. But in UAE, everything has aircon, so it's better to be inside rather than be outside. That's what I noticed as to why people are actually darker, because it's actually, in an enclosed space here in the Philippines, it's actually harder. So that's why there's just a lot of people hanging out outside. That's something I finally understood, because at first I was like thinking they're just sitting outside like their balcony or something, and I was like thinking why, and I realized it's actually less hot. It's actually because it's so hot inside, it feels like a microwave. And I was like, oh, okay. And then, but yeah, they would ask questions like I feel like a foreigner, and they're like, oh, you know how to speak Tagalog pala. And then they also expect me to have an English accent when I speak Tagalog, and I get it. I honestly get it. But for me, it just feels weird. I get weirded out because like it makes me feel like, am I not a normal human being? Like, isn't it normal that like this? And when I say stuff like, oh well, I went to a Filipino school, I seen Filipinos, stuff like that, and it's not necessarily toxic in the sense how it's more of, it makes me feel so weird about myself, and that's what's toxic. It's not them being toxic, but I end up being like feeling toxic for myself because they would ask questions like with certain foods. They would ask, "Do you eat this? Do you eat that?" And I'm like, "Yes, yes, I do. Sinigang is my favorite. Adobo is my favorite. Like those stuff. And do I eat pork in this? Well, in reality, I do eat less pork because UAE is an Islamic country. It doesn't mean it's not there, but I personally also just don't like it, not because of UAE not like it, not but me as a person, I don't like to eat it. And then, like people have labeled me saucy, which is a slang term for social, and I'm just like, I'm not though. What do you mean? Like I don't know. I don't like the term arte. I get it that I have moments like that. It's not a bad thing, it's not. But like when they already label me without knowing me as a person, that's when I get kind of offended. Like just because I look a certain way, speak in a
Because
way, like because the people that have gotten to know me, because right now what I'm doing here to really assimilate myself in the community is that I've volunteered for HFTN, which is a organization that helps people in poverty. And so of course I've been exposed to certain things like farm work, and one of the things they said was that they're actually happy that I didn't even show any qualms when they asked me to like, you need to like do this with the soil and everything. I never even like, ew, that's dirty. Something like and it's not fake, but people won't initially think of me like that. They'll think that I would be that person who would complain about, why are you making me do this work? Why are you like this? And the sense of judgment, that's what I don't appreciate. Like everyone's just like looking at me, like judging me based on a book. And I understand that how I dress as well, kind of different. But like, yeah, it became very toxic for me. That's how it affected me in that sense. Like the culture of how they treat somebody foreign. And but then there's this part that maybe it's a me thing, but I don't like how they want me to get used to the culture as if it's okay. For me, I'm like, no, I don't want to get used to it in the sense that it's okay. I will stand up for it because there's this thing where one of the reasons why actually I learned Tagalog was that I didn't want to experience what my brother experiences, because people would be like, you should speak Tagalog, you're Filipino anyway. Stuff like that. So I never wanted to experience that because out of other people's experiences, they would be told that. So I wanted to learn it myself so I wouldn't feel like an outcast but then later I learned it was out of jealousy. They're jealous of people who can speak English very well. They're jealous of this and that. And as I stay here, it's kind of sad because I don't want to label it as toxic, there's just traits, they're just parts.
yeah,
But honestly, it's easier to just say the whole thing is toxic than just nitpicking which ones are good, which ones are bad, because the bad kind of outweighs the good. It's unfortunate, but there are good things about it. But yeah, that's not the main topic, what's good in the Philippines. Yeah, but to those who are watching that are not Filipino,
Yeah.
it's okay to come here. We're actually nicer to foreigners. It's funny. We're nicer to
Yeah.
foreigners, but yeah. Um, so that's how it affected my life ever since I got here. Yeah. Anyway, is there anything you want to comment on?
Yeah, now that um you actually spoke about your experiences and how it still affected you, I kind of had to like rethink and
Mm-hmm.
actually realize that there are actually still certain aspects that affect me. Like for example,
Mm-hmm.
like yung mga na-mention like family gatherings and making comments. It actually still happens. Cause
Mm-hmm.
and I also wanted to comment like you specifically experience like, you know, being judged because of how white you are or you spoke English. But at the same time, there's this problem of how people put that, and you mentioned that it was actually toxic, like this image of like the
Mm-hmm.
mestiza and
Mm-hmm.
you know the English speaking is actually put on a pedestal here in the
Yeah.
Philippines. Not only like in our country, but within the Filipino community.
Mm-hmm.
Actually bothers me so much because as I was growing up, it also affected me. Because
Mm-hmm.
like honestly, I'm not like as fair skinned as what you like, you know, like I'm not white, man. I think I'm closer to Mirena. I don't know, but yeah, so and it's actually very um do you say like it's parang super halata talaga sa culture natin kasi with how much whitening products are so you
Mm-hmm.
know like advertised and it's
It
still a
is.
thing, right? Despite the fact that a lot of the youth are moving towards progressive mindsets towards beauty because
Mm-hmm.
there's not supposed to be a standard. That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's no
Yeah.
standard to beauty. There's not supposed to be a standard to beauty because it's
Yeah.
subjective. Like
Mm-hmm.
beauty is like you being happy with yourself, owning your individuality, diba? Like that's what's beautiful, not a standard set by certain groups of people
Mm-hmm.
and has now brought insecurities among
Mm-hmm.
um, a lot of the young ones, diba? And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very sometimes I'm also troubled by the fact that I don't know if you can still blame Filipinos because as like
Mm-hmm.
a country that was colonized, like this is
Mm-hmm.
imperialistic mindset,
Yeah.
'di ba? About like yung dapat matamang sa ilong mo maputi ka.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just something that was passed on from like generations ago. But at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, I think that our generation right now, like especially like yung millennials or boomers, I think we're also accountable sa pagtuloy ng ganitong mindset. You know,
Yes.
because we can stop that
Mm-hmm.
cycle and that culture if we wanted to. If we stop pushing like, oh, you're supposed to be white. I was told that I could like
Mm.
use whitening soaps and I'm like,
Papaya
why?
soap.
That papaya soap, man, that freaking ano pa ba, like that acid thing. Basta like yung mga ganun. Diba? And it's a I don't think it's super like it's constructive for young girls
Mhm.
to hear that when
Yeah.
on when you think about it actually like indigenous Filipinos we aren't really like fair skinned. I'm not saying that fair skinned people are like they're not pretty, but the thing is
Yeah.
it also doesn't mean that when you're darker like you're not
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. I'm just we should be more open to like the
Mm-hmm.
standards of beauty. And can I
Yeah.
also say that specifically for females, there's this strong standard for like, hindi ko, I mean, it's more of a
Yeah.
personal experience that I want to
Mm-hmm.
share. But body hair, for example, because we're
Oh
stuck
yeah.
to, we have a certain idea of femininity in
Mm-hmm.
the Philippines, and that's also one of the things that we're not. Unfortunately, not everyone is still open to, especially like um the older ones. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I dislike hearing is the term kababae mong tao.
Ah, yeah.
Right?
Like.
Kab- Kababae mong tao, di ka nag-shave, kababae mong tao,
Mm-hmm.
di mo alam kung ganyan kilikili mo or something.
Yeah.
'Di ba? Right? It's honestly like they think it's supposed to like up they're trying to teach you to uphold yourself or something, but the thing
Mm-hmm.
is it's actually demeaning to girls.
Mm-hmm.
Like that term na kababae mong tao because it's
Mm-hmm.
trying to push us within a certain box of what we just
Mm-hmm.
should be, and it's not supposed to be like that. grabe, na-trigger.
Yeah, there's a lot to unload with this. It's not also, I do believe the things that we're also sharing, it's not just within us, not just within the Filipino community. There are other nationalities that could also relate to that. And
Right.
something that I also want to add, I just remembered is that, so this is no offense to people who are morena or anything. I understand that they started saying this phrase to help themselves feel better, but it's something that even, but later on there I have met like morenos that said, oh, it's actually I'm actually sorry that I said that. But basically, you know the term like maganda ka lang kasi maputi ka. And
Yeah.
that I heard that like I would hear it, not necessarily towards me but other people, and it's just like um that's, I get it though that they meant it as like I'm still pretty even though I'm dark skinned. I get the idea behind it, and
Yeah.
I feel sad that they had to resort to that way of complimenting themselves. You know, it I just, it's another thing that happens like when we compliment somebody, we have, you know, it's fine to just compliment somebody without bringing another person down, you know, like that. Like there were, I would hear that and I'll be like, am I really just pretty because I have white skin? Stuff like that. And I would just be
Um,
like, and then honestly, for a time being, I got scared of getting dark because I would hear people say that about a person that has fair skin. And whenever I got darker, I think you heard of, you saw how I'm so scared of the sun at times. So I'll be like, I would always wear long sleeves and stuff like that because I was like I said, it made this toxic mindset of me because I was like, oh, I have to protect my beauty because I fit the standard. That's how it was impressed on me. And it wasn't my fault that I felt prettier than others. It was what was groomed into me that I am supposedly because of the standard. Mhm. Now, I think indirectly we already said that we have contributed to the Filipino community, but what is something you can share that you think you are still contributing to the toxicity, because you have said that we have to stop it, but of course to stop it we have to recognize what we are still contributing.
I think I I'll be sharing like another toxicity that I think is still present. And it's
Mm-hmm.
this, I don't know if I mean contributing to it, although I feel like I'm part of it. It's one thing that I also noticed within our community is this, we have a very high regard for STEM fields,
Mm.
right? It's it's really sad that um like art sectors or art fields or anything just outside of STEM is suddenly just not
Yeah.
great in the eyes of a lot of Filipino. Well, not actually, it's very inspiring that a lot of the youth are like, changing their minds
Mm-hmm.
around that idea. But what's sad is that a lot of those who are old from the older generations do still think
Mm-hmm.
that way. They still look down on like the field of arts or other things. Basta labas. Kaya nga, it's a joke. You'd find it as a joke on the internet about how Filipino parents would be like, when you're born, it's either you become a doctor, an engineer, or a
Mm-hmm.
lawyer. And it's not just a joke. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually true, and it runs deep in our culture. Because the problem is, like in a very in a third world country, it's very hard to find opportunity to be able to like thrive talaga in fields such as art. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the things that feeds this very terrible cycle talaga. I'm not sure, like I think I'm contributing to it because I'm kind of still following the same path that my parents want
Mm-hmm.
for me. And the thing is, actually, I've already shared this to you. Like, I think most people would say, so ba't di ka lumaban,
Mm-hmm.
'di ba? Like mag-iba ka. But I think this is also something that I've talked with other friends na when as a child, I don't know if it's called brainwashing, but technically your parents kind of brainwash you na, mag-doctor ka, mag-lawyer ka, mag-engineer
Mm-hmm.
ka. And somehow you start to like accept that for yourself and like you just maintain that one. Parang
Mm-hmm.
you only focus on that thing. And then this is something that I experienced that suddenly when I was in college na, that okay, if I didn't want to go into med, what would I be doing? Because the thing is, I was so set on what my parents wanted for me,
Mm-hmm.
that I wasn't able to like look at other things that, I guess I could have done otherwise. So parang ganun. And I it's like I've noticed na this is actually really common na we see certain professions as better than ano. Pero you also can't blame kasi ang hirap naman din talagang yun nga, as I said, mag-thrive sa country
Mm-hmm.
na wala din namang pakialam sa other
Mm-hmm.
sectors, 'di ba? So, it's sad. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, you did tell me about the story about why you went into STEM, and even as your best friend, I supported you. Like, go with what you want, but then you're like, but this is what my parents wanted for me, and I
I
think
don't know what I want.
you don't know what So like growing up, it's not bad to look up to our parents, right? Because we do look up to them for everything. For what we want to eat, what we're, those stuff. So it
Yeah, it's
makes
true.
sense that even when it came to our careers, we also look up to them and ask them, what should we do? Because they're basically just being a parent, it's not actually their
Yeah.
fault. They're just saying what they believe is the best for us. And it doesn't, like, I read this on Facebook just today that parents don't wake up and think of the worst way to hurt the child. Like they
Yeah.
don't
Yeah, I
actually
saw
think
that.
that. They think of the best things, but
Right.
it's not the best. It lacks in stuff, and it doesn't invalidate what we do or also invalidate what they were also trying to do. But yeah, it makes sense. And I think, well, in our community, um it's also just hard when, like you said, you as well as a person, when even people in STEM who wanted to do something else also don't take a stand for it, right? It's kind of like counterproductive where you say support artists, but you yourself did not
Oh,
try to do it
yeah.
for yourself. So it's also just kind of hard, and trying to fight a system that's really not built for art itself. Although I see that
Yeah.
they're trying. They're
They're
trying.
trying.
There are communities that are trying, there are small groups that are trying, but it's not put into this aspect that art is a field that is valued. Like, I think they also put this thing like, oh, it's harder if you put this. And the thing about that is that art itself, I would say in certain aspects, it's not as hard as taking care of a person's actual life. Yeah, in that aspect, yes, it's you're not dealing with a person's life, you're not dealing with that, so it's not hard in that aspect. But to a person who really loves it, really puts passion into it, like time, effort, I would argue that they also spend the same amount of time to become a doctor as well. Like they also spend that, if they really love it, they do spend the same amount of time and money as well. It could end up to that. And I think those are the arguments that I don't like. I don't think they're arguments at all when they say, oh, there's time, effort, those things. It cannot equate to those fields when it can. When it comes to responsibility towards a person, yeah, sure, fine. It makes sense that it's not as hard like that because, of course, doctors are dealing with lives, lawyers are dealing with people's cases, with, like that. But it doesn't make it any less,
It's
being
true.
appreciated. In art itself, it also moves a lot of people's lives though. Like it also affects like people in STEM. I've also seen people in STEM where like they get inspired by people who are in art. Like they would see there are stories where like, oh, I saw this post, this artwork about humanity. Like there are artworks like that, showing how the world is. And then there would be a person who actually does get inspired. So some of the doctors could have became a doctor because of art. So saying it doesn't even like it's not related, it is. Because art is an expression of people who could be suffering, and some people see that and say, you know what? I don't I want to see artworks that are of victories, not of oppression or anything like that. Because that like I've been looking at Filipino art and a lot of it's actually based on our oppression. Actually, like that, like what I've been looking at, I was like, yikes, like there are beautiful ones. Yeah, we have a beautiful culture, and that's why it should be, put into museums and everything. Like it's so weird. Like the the world outside like loves Van Gogh, stuff like that. But when we don't actually support our own, like
That's
there are
true.
more people that are I will argue that are better than Van Gogh and Da Vinci and everything. They may have pioneered certain art styles and everything, but there are other people who could have cultivated it and made it better. Hmm.
Mm.
And of
And
course, mhm, go on.
no, I was just gonna add, like you were right about how we've started now and then kind of appreciating those certain
Mhm,
fields such as art. Pero yun nga, I think one problem this then is in our country specifically, we lack national effort to like
mhm,
support the growth of such fields. And yeah, yun. I also wanted to like bring up like yun nga, like how you said that art inspires even like those in STEM fields. And it reminded me of this quote from Dead Poet Society. Guys can watch that. It's a good movie. And it mentions how medicine, law, business, engineering, things like that, those are needed to sustain life. But
mhm,
poetry, beauty, like art and love, those are the things that we live for,
mhm,
right? And it gives you an idea of why um like art and music and other sectors outside of STEM are still as significant
mhm,
as those in STEM, because
mhm,
they give color, they inspire, and
mhm.
etc.
Yeah, like they both should be. Everything should be in a sense like they're important for their individual parts in society. Not
Exactly.
one is more important than the other. Like, of course, we don't want more artists than doctors. We what we want is equal appreciation for both
For
fields.
both.
That's what we're
Yeah.
fighting for. Yeah. And now, so there's actually a lot that we talked about. So, you have a way to protect or filter through this toxicity within this community.
To protect myself. Um, Actually, when I get over, I don't know if it's like a good advice to like, because a lot of the toxicity doesn't just stem like a lot of it we mentioned this from family or sometimes
Mm-hmm.
like other people. I don't know if it's a good advice to like cut off people, but like alam mo,
Mm-hmm.
I think it helps to sometimes maintain distance for the sake
Mm-hmm.
of your um mental state, So like personally, that is something that I do when I realize, and I know that some people might comment na parang why don't you just change, 'di ba, like how they think or just share, but they're just I think there are just people that aren't willing to change.
Mm-hmm.
So with people like that, I mean you could try, 'di ba? Pero what I mean is like with people like that, I think you don't necessarily have to cut them off, pero I think it's a good thing, a good coping mechanism is to kind of distance yourself na if it isn't good for you. And how else do you cope? I guess um you see a lot of things. Actually, a lot of the toxicities in communities I actually more of realize when during this digital age, because a lot of things get shared on the internet, and then
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people share things, they make articles like the one you read,
Yeah.
and some people share their stories, and then that's when you realize like, oh no.
Yeah, and that's really true. And I guess for me, as my personal way of protecting or filtering myself is knowing that I can have my own community, which is my best friends, my community of my best friends, where I go to you guys, like you, Craven, everyone else, to like, hey, I'm having a hard time with all these changes. I feel like I'm losing a piece of myself, of my identity. And then you guys remind me, no, Eunice, you're like this. You don't have to change for the Philippines. Because like a lot of people have been saying that I have to. Like changing, like adjusting and adapting is one thing, but to change who I am that's also a different thing.
Oh,
Um like other people say like you have to let go that you were in Abu Dhabi, and I'm like, let go of 20 years? Let You're asking me to let go of my identity?
yeah.
What? Like, and then there are like people like when you're here you'll become more Filipino, more like that. And I'm like, I'm not I'm not saying that I don't want to be Filipino. What I'm saying is I don't want to be this version of Filipino that's gossiping, that's body shaming, that's comparing each other and bringing each other down. That's not the
Judgmental.
you know that's not the type of Filipino I want to be. That's why I say no. I don't want to be more Filipino. I don't want to, like, until now, you know me very well. I don't like gossip. Like, us as best friends, we don't actually do that. We actually share stuff that are within our circle of friends. You know, we whatever we share is like, oh, have you heard this about this? And it's mutual friends. It's not that's not gossip. Gossip for me is like it's somewhere that's like totally unrelated to us, and we're talking about it and just like spreading something. And you
Yeah.
know me. And here though, um, a lot of people, since I am like kind of like fresh meat from the UAE, they want to know stuff about
Yeah.
stuff. And for me, it's like I would love to share my stories, but I try my best to not share my stories like with best friends like you. It's not because I don't want to talk about you, it's because there are certain things that you wouldn't be comfortable with another person saying. It's fine that I have it within me, but like for me to say to another person just as a story, because it was also a story from the UAE, I wouldn't do that. Not to like anyone in general. It doesn't have to be a best friend. Like even a stranger or whatever, if like they talk to me, I don't even share those kind of things. Like that's how I am as a person. But here, it's as if you have to share everything, like this, that, and I'm like, what? Like there, it's an actual culture where like like there are those memes like titas will be like, if you want the latest gossip, just call a tita or something
Yeah,
like
the
that.
tita.
Titas all know. So and I'm like, okay, but yeah,
People just want
for,
to get into your business. Like that's
right.
like so yeah, so culture talaga natin. And so I think you dapat pausuhin natin just like, the term it's none of your business because that's
Mhm.
because
It really
that's
is.
it really
Yeah.
isn't. Like a lot of the things, and you did mention din na parang when it's not gossip when like we're talking about ourselves din naman.
Mhm.
So that's what's bad because people get very excited when they talk about other people,
Yeah.
'di ba? And it just creates so much hysteria, and I just it's I think we can agree naman din talaga na it's a very toxic Filipino trait talaga itong
Mhm.
like pagiging chismosa. Like
Mhm.
some people just laugh about this chismosa culture, but it's actually
Mhm.
there consequences to that culture, and
Yeah, and
it
it's
ruins
so sad.
reputations of people and some
Yeah.
destroys people, diba? Like just word of mouth. And
Mhm,
oh,
exactly.
I think you're gonna be like magkaka flashbacks. But I remember that quote that I would always put in my yearbooks, like hysteria is impossible without an audience, which I think is
Mhm.
very, present then sa culture natin. Like a lot of our
Mhm.
problems is parang uh is given traction by like having these groups of people just feeding negativity so large parang ganun.
Mhm. Yeah. And I'd also like to add that when you said like gossip actually ruins reputations and everything, we as our batch we had classmates that moved schools
It's
because of this.
just
I'm not
because of
of course
that.
gonna mention their because I'm protecting them, but that happened. Like good friends of ours couldn't take it that they had to move to a different school, and these friends, now that I talk to them, at times they still feel bothered by the things that were
It's
said
true.
behind their back.
Yeah.
Like even if they have like it's different. Forgiving is to say to let it go. Like I have no hatred towards you anymore. But what the action left was a scar. Actually, sometimes it hurts. It still hurts. And on the aspect of actual like a medical thing, like there are actual scars. There's this thing called phantom feeling that they still feel the pain at times, even if this like times go by. And like I have certain scars that it's still actually like physically painful. So imagine like emotional scars; those could still
Yeah.
be, So it is really hurtful, and I really hate the terms like that's just how we got used to it. That's how it is, nay. Like it's
Yeah.
excusing that. No, just live with it. And I'm like, no, I don't want to live in this, and I don't want the future, our future children, whether mine or like the others, the next generation to live with this. Because back in the article, what Abby Passion said was that it's actually an intergenerational issue.
It's
It
true,
has
yeah.
to, as much as we ourselves want to change it, it has to continue on. Because like if we start something and the next one doesn't, it goes away. It never even
Yeah.
becomes a thing. Hmm. And is there anything else you would like to add? Some things that were mentioned earlier.
siguro I also want to point out, like, I suddenly thought of ano pala, another toxic trait, which is actually it actually became an issue like last year, especially because we went through the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic and there were a
Mm-hmm.
lot of storms, mga bagyo and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
there's this thing is actually considered a Filipino characteristic. It's a virtue. It's considered a virtue.
Mm-hmm.
But when you actually look at it, it has it's kind of not really great. And this is resiliency in the
Yeah.
Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to like discuss that.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, when we talk about Filipino resiliency, just for siguro other people who aren't really part of the Filipino community, it's
Mm-hmm.
basically how we kind of sugarcoat that Filipinos are always happy no matter what happens to us because we're so freaking resilient.
We
But
can bounce back up when
yeah,
something brings down.
yeah, we will always stand up. That's basically, and we're so we 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 actually hold on to that so much. We actually glorify it so much. But the thing is,
Mm-hmm.
with resiliency, is when we glorify it, we also glorify poverty and hardship. When
Mm-hmm.
we push this narrative of resiliency in such a positive light and it's unending, we try
Mm-hmm.
to make it seem like it's okay that people are going through so much suffering just because they're
Mm-hmm.
resilient. And
Mm-hmm.
we're it's trying to make their situations look better than what it actually is.
Yeah.
And the problem is, it's actually irritating because, well, let's get into politics. But this is actually a movement that was also pushed by, particularly the Filipino government. And I think a lot of people also realize that um, they use this so that it's like a way of refusing to make progressive changes just because they
Mm-hmm.
think or they want to believe that the Filipino people can handle whatever comes our way.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly find that so sad because this is considered a
Mm-hmm.
virtue and a characteristic among the common Filipino. So, and what happens is also with like our community, that among Filipinos, is that we're also pressured to have the ability to overcome anything, and
Yeah.
you're weak if you can't handle it. And
Mm-hmm.
because and sometimes you're also pressured because unfortunately there are also no changes being done to support you if you can't handle it either way,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
diba? And also in relation to that, when you can't handle anything, I also want to point out that another problem that I think is also present, despite a lot of movements regarding this, is how much we look down on like the concept of mental health, which I
Mm-hmm.
also want to share that I also experience it. Because when I talk
Mm-hmm.
about it, a lot of people I know, I'm of course not going to mention specifically, but usually a lot of them are like older than talaga
Mm-hmm.
na and Filipinos who really do not understand it, like how
Mm-hmm.
much it takes a toll on people, like having mental issues. Kaya nga, di ba, like there's this concept of resiliency, like you're supposed to handle anything, but what if you can't? And then
Mm-hmm.
suddenly just they're just like you're weak, and they think na it's a problem na they think when you mention mental illnesses na pag-iinarte siya,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not, because there are even studies that prove that it is indeed a medical condition din talaga. You're not supposed to think of it as like nag-iinarte lang yung tao na to,
Mm-hmm.
because I know I think I'm not exactly sure what the study is, but they were comparing like someone like I think a CT scan of like someone who was
Mm-hmm.
depressed,
Yeah.
like the brain of someone who was depressed to someone who wasn't, and there was a
Mm-hmm.
difference. It's a serious problem. Like that's basically what I wanted to point out. Like especially us in the Philippines, I know that a lot of people naman talaga have no access to like certain like yung syempre,
Mm-hmm.
education and stuff. But I think it's great that we now have a movement that's like spreading awareness about it.
Mm-hmm.
Ring, I just wish that the like especially like the older generation would like be more open minded to the fact that it exists, like problems like this exist. And why I wanted to mention like mental issues because a lot of the things that we talked about, like resiliency, like body
Mm-hmm.
shaming, no respect for boundaries, and a lot of it could actually contribute to mental health issues. Kaya,
Yep.
'di ba? So that's why I wanted to like talk about it. Like these things that we consider normal could actually break someone. just
Yeah.
because it's part of the culture. Kaya, yeah, I wanted to add that there, sprinkle it
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you added that. It also, to just comment, actually, when I went through Wikipedia, although it's not an accurate place to go to, but one of the things they listed down as our values as a Filipino community is flexibility, adaptability, and creativity, and ability to survive.
That, yeah.
And the fact that that's something that's listed down on Wikipedia or something, it
Yeah.
makes it like, for me, it's just like, let's say you are, let's quote, weak in the standards of being a Filipino, then
Yeah.
people who are not as resilient, when they can't bounce back up, people will be like, oh, you're not Filipino then. You can't, like, you're taking out this identity because they're not able to do this one thing. They're not able to bounce back up. And I also, something that you said about like the government just relies on the fact that they're gonna take it, like the fact it's like a scapegoat, like, oh, we're Filipino, we'll get through this. Like, why? No, that's not, like, we have to be progressive, because if we weren't progressive, then we would still be doing a lot of things in the past. Like, progress is a good thing. It is scary though, from what I do understand. I'm not gonna completely down our government. It's just that the issue that like, since it is kind of political, this is kind of a political issue because we are talking about a community, is that people who have studied the issues about the Philippines, is that for it to really change, on the sense of like presidency wise, a president, the presidents have to have the same goal, each one, like it has to go on for like six
Yeah.
terms, like consecutive terms, for it really to change. And the thing is, a lot of the presidents have done what they did was their best intentions and stuff like that. And um, I'm just gonna be honest, I'm not for Marcos. If anyone's gonna call at me for that, but one of the reasons why he did do martial law is because he wanted to change it. Because he knew that if he ends, everything he did would go away. Because what he really wanted to do was to stay in put, so he would change the Philippines. That was his main goal, and he just became a little too extreme at the end, yeah. But his main goal was to like control the change, because he knew that once his term was done, whatever change he would do, another president might just ruin it. Like, it's not progressive, because there's also this idea like, I can do better. Like, there's those kind of
Yeah.
attitudes that whatever was started by the previous president, they don't continue it, even if it was something good, something great. Sometimes, like in leadership roles in general, it's not about doing something, it's not about bringing something new. It's about cultivating something already good that's already there. That's what a good leader would be. A good leader would see that, oh, there's already existing things that are great. So let's work on that. Like, let's work on something like that. It's a system that's great. It's good. But yeah, it's really a hard thing. It will take generations and generations. And so, to those watching, you guys can make a difference. It does make a difference. Like, that tiny, even if you're just changing yourself, it does make a difference.
Yeah.
And mhm. And before we go to our last question, I also like to add, I forgot to mention that Abby Passion is actually a writer for One Down Media. And I was just so One Down Media is actually a Filipino organization, I like to believe, that is trying to reinvent the Filipino identity in media culture right now. Like, their videos are so nice. So I'll link that below. And guys, this is not like, I'm not like doing this just to promote or anything. Like, it's not a collaborating thing. I just really love their media. Like, they've talked about how like there should be more Filipinos in Hollywood, stuff like that. I feel like you might have seen one of their videos. And it's just so nice that they're really taking a stand that there's more um and there's more to being Asian. Like, there's also this Filipino community. Because like they've talked about how like when Asians are being portrayed, it's always just like the Koreans, the Chinese, and this. They forgot that there's this whole other community that's also Filipino. And they talked about how when you cast a Filipino for a role, cast them as a Filipino, not a Latina, not
That's
anything, but that's something that they've done, and I really appreciate that they've been doing that. So One Down is really amazing, so you guys can check that out in the description. And now, going back to the discussion, what is an advice you can give to those watching that are experiencing the toxicities within this community?
I guess the same advice then of as I was talking about how I cope, which is to like accept
Mm-hmm.
only the things you can control. And like, you know, when you get overwhelmed, you can take a step back, but also like not forget about the things that you learned.
Mm-hmm.
Ganon. And just also just to add to that then is uh as people or part of a community, I think it's important to find value in our role as members of community, so that it's remember that our interactions in some way may affect someone, and how we are in communities may or may not actually lead to like progress. It's like our roles as individuals is important to like progress of a community, diba? And um it may not be like technological progress, but progress towards being a more compassionate and open-minded community. And message to the older ones, Jonah. I just think that I think that like people are older than us. Kaya I wanted to talk about ageism than previously. Is that I, like more I think it's idealistic. Or like I hope that a lot of them can be more open-minded, especially kaya like with especially with our like I think they can also still learn from us then. Like
Mm-hmm.
despite what they think na they know more, but the thing is you can learn from anyone despite their
Mm-hmm.
age. And I think that particularly with those in like a previous generation, they shouldn't get so stuck in the past, especially
Mm-hmm.
because we're all supposed to be looking towards the future, diba?
Mm-hmm.
And Yoon actually mentioned this previously then about how we all owe it to the next generation to identify what is toxic, no matter how normal it looks, and to make a change about that. And making changes as an individual, kasi as an individual member within our group can, yun nga, as I mentioned, create great ripples of change in the long run,
Yeah,
diba?
definitely.
And also like as we spoke about resiliency, I think they're like just because something is considered as a trait, as a common trait or as our virtue, doesn't mean it's right. And
Mm-hmm.
specifically about that trait, it's because when we glorify resiliency and surviving too much, you actually specified the word surviving,
Mm-hmm.
like putting this too much in a positive light can unfortunately lead to us undermining the suffering and trauma that comes with that surviving. Kaya it's important for us to take a look, like take a step back and look at, you know, what at the things that we consider normal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, those are good. That's a good advice. And I also love the fact that you mentioned that just changing ourselves is also a good thing, because I think one of the ideas we have as well is that some people think that they have to infect a lot of people, like influence a lot, and like you don't have to, like it's not, you
Yeah.
don't need to, like if you're not the type of person that can like go on social media and be so vocal,
Yeah.
then that's fine. That's fine. If
Yeah.
you yourself is just educating yourself and just educating your small circle of friends, that's fine.
Yeah.
Because I think other people, I'm not like shaming them, but I understand that like there are other people already doing it anyway. I don't need to do anything. And I understand where you're coming from, but you just simply doing, like taking care of yourself, changing yourself
Yeah.
helps. It actually helps, because you never know. A lot of people are actually looking at us like whether we like it or not.
That's
We don't
true.
have to be a celebrity for people to look at each other, like we naturally just like observe one another. And if you yourself is like standing against what is normal, because just because it's normal, it doesn't make it automatically good or automatically bad. That's something that I've learned. It's just common ground. It's just something very common, and common doesn't mean good or bad. It's like a neutral term. But yeah, when we think, that's why what I also want to clarify is that question what's normal, but not in the intention of looking for bad things either. Don't
Yeah,
have
that's
that
true.
intention that, oh, this is normal, this should not, like this shouldn't be normal. Like there's also a toxic mindset to that. No,
Yeah.
we
Don't
have
be
to
nitpicky.
you know objectively ask, okay, is this, like, look at the pros and cons. But sometimes I would like to say on behalf of our batches that we are times biased. Like there are times when we are biased and we don't see the good that the older generation has done, which is I would also like to say is unfair.
That's it.
So on behalf of the older gen, I'm like saying we're not trying to like discredit the things that you have done, but we're
Yeah.
just saying that give us the chance now to do other things better. We're not trying to ruin everything else. There are things that, like progressive. We want to be better. All of us just want better intentions for each other. And yeah, to those who are watching who are a little older, I hope you don't feel disrespected in a new way. But that's
Yeah.
never,
Disclaimer,
never,
that's not our point. It's not our
that's not our
intention.
point. That's not our intention in any way, shape, or form.
Mm-mm.
We just want to say that change is a good thing. It's hard though. Honestly, it is
It's
hard.
hard.
It's
It's
not.
hard.
We're not saying this will take like, it'll just take one generation. No, it's gonna
Yeah.
take a
No.
lot. And that's why it will also be helpful because it is true. Like I did say that age does kind of give authority, and it kind of does in certain ways. It does
Yeah.
because we do respect people who do have a lot more experiences. We just want you guys to understand that you shouldn't use that against us for us to always follow.
Yeah.
But we respect it. We understand that yes, you went through a lot, that you at your time you didn't have technology. And yeah, but just because we have technology now doesn't mean it has come with benefits either. There's also so many things regarding technology that's actually sad now because that's a whole different aspect. But yeah, there are every era has their own pros and cons. So I hope we like have this understanding and learn from each other, not like say who is a
Yeah.
better generation or anything. That's something I want to clarify. Although
That's
we
right.
were
Yeah.
talking from our generation, which makes sense because it is our generation.
Mhm.
We're not saying no to your advice, and I'm also saying this to our generation, our batch, and the younger ones that just because we have access to the internet doesn't necessarily mean we know better than them. Like in
That's
general
true.
sense, no. Don't go very cocky and say like I already learned that. I'm more woke. No, that's also toxic, my friend. No, be open to learning, be open to change, be open to being given advice. Yeah.
There should be an intergenerational discussion,
Exactly.
just like what we're doing here. I think it's important to, like, one of the things we want to highlight is to grow as a community. Then is that we should
Mhm.
learn, like,
Exactly.
from each other.
Mhm. Yeah. Anyway, now I give you the floor to plug anything that you want to plug, and I might plug stuff that are yours because you might be too shy to plug it yourself. So,
Wala?
yeah.
I want to
But
plug. I have nothing to plug. I want to plug that kasi malapit na po ang halalan. Guys, go register and vote. Thank you.
yes, that is true. That is actually great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, the things that we discussed and any media that or articles will be linked below for you guys to read as well to educate yourself because there may be things that we did not say. And also what I do want to plug that she did not plug is that she does have a song on YouTube. So that will be linked
God.
below. And it's a lovely song with like I guess low quality equipment. And that's why it's amazing because like at low quality equipment she made an amazing song. So yes, go check that out. It's called Stuck at Home. She made it because of this pandemic. It's so relatable. And the MV, like the music video, like the lyric video is also so cute. It's also done by her. The artwork's done by her. Everything's by her. She's a one-woman show. Yes. Anyway,
Yes, guys.
thank you so much, Bubs, for coming today. Yay!
Thank you for having me here.
Ooh.
Thank you to us dahil sa pag-start ng toxic culture.
Yeah.
Guys,
Ooh.
we started this whole thing. Grabe ako lang. Nakisali ako sa effort.
Grabe. Okay, anyway. Bye!
Bye!
Thank you for watching this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. Make sure to check out my socials, my friend's socials, and Toxic Talk socials in the description below. Once again, I encourage you to ask questions that will be answered on that 19th episode. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you are notified when the next episode goes up. As you wait, you can check out all my YouTube videos on my channel. Take care always and stay safe. Bye!